I think that's probably around 10 people. But anyway, glad you could make it. So this forum, this session is titled, Are Your Buyers Mobile Yet? In reality, that would be a very short forum if that's essentially all we focused on. So really the subtext of all of this is, and what does that mean? What does that mean for all the constituents in this space? Just to start off with some facts, I mean, just to make the point that the right question to ask is not, are your buyers mobile? The answer is yes, they are. So at this point, 17% of all smartphone users, smartphone users conduct online purchases on their mobile devices regularly. And more telling, according to Forrester, by 2014, 50% of all purchases, period, this is not just smartphone purchases, all purchases would have been influenced by some sort of mobile engagement. So that's phenomenal. And then obviously, just mobile internet usage, it's grown to 120 million users, mobile internet usage in the past 3 years, which also is unprecedented. So I say those things just to kind of, set aside the notion that, yes, absolutely, your buyers are mobile, but then so what? So also what's interesting is because of the advent of location-based services and everything else, it's actually changed the nature of bridging online and offline services, as you all very well know. A sale that can originate or start on online can end up being closed offline, or vice versa, thanks to comparison shopping, geo-targeted ads, and so forth. But before I go too much further, really the core point of this panel discussion, and this is really going to be a discussion, by the way. We don't have any other slides other than the title slide, so we're going to be a very interactive session. The core focus is going to be around, what does this really mean? What does this mean for all the constituents? The consumer, how is this changing the nature of how consumers actually find merchants, find services, buy services? What does it mean for the ad networks and the platforms that actually provide these enabling capabilities? What does it mean for the merchant as yet another channel to basically display and sell their wares? And probably the most important, particularly for this group right here, what does it mean for all the affiliate marketers in terms of giving them enabling capabilities to essentially optimize their revenue stream? So before I go too much further, just want to start off introducing the dream team here. I think we've got a great bunch of people that essentially cover the entire ecosystem that I just described, all the constituencies. We've got Pinky Brand from dotMobi, Sarah Hodkinson from Where.com, Barg Upender from Mobomo, and Adam Viener from IMWAVE. I'll give them 30 seconds each to introduce themselves and tell us what their company does, and then we'll get going from there. Pinky?
Sure, thanks, Navin. My name is Pinky Brand, and that is my real name. And I'm from Dublin, Ireland, where dotMobi is headquartered. We're a mobile internet company. We were formed by Google, Microsoft, and Visa originally to solve a lot of hard problems as it relates to the mobile internet, because it's very different from the traditional internet. And we were acquired by Affilius recently, which is the second largest domain name registry operator in the world, managing the .org, .mobi, .me domains you may have heard of. But basically what we do is we help businesses get on the mobile internet very quickly and make it easy for consumers to interact with those businesses by helping the business to detect that a user is mobile, to adapt that content for that particular experience and present that in a mobile format. And that's essentially what we do.
Great. It's actually 30 seconds. Good job. Sarah?
I'll try and be succinct. Good morning. I'm Sarah Hodkinson. I manage partner marketing for Where. Where is a location-based media company, and we have two central tenets to our offering. We have the consumer mobile application Where, which currently has about 4 million active users. And in addition to that, we have a mobile ad network that we launched earlier this year. The mobile ad network spans over 200 publishers and has a reach of 50 million consumers.
Barg?
Hi, my name is Barg Upender. I'm the founder of an app development company called Mobomo. We help merchants build e-commerce apps and mobile websites. Actually, more interestingly, recently we've been also building app stores for devices. So things like iTunes for tablet devices, for example. So we're basically infrastructure providers for the merchants.
My name is Adam Viener. I'm the chairman and founder of IMWAVE. We are an affiliate marketing company primarily focused on search advertising, PPC marketing. We've been testing some of the mobile pay-per-call stuff and getting into some buying mobile targeted advertising and figuring out how that's going to work from a monetization point of view as a performance marketing agency.
Great, thank you all. So I think a good place to start would be what we think are kind of governing mobile trends, starting from the consumer, the merchant, and everything else. So let's talk through kind of what are some of the things that are going on there that are driving development kind of across the board. So going back to one of the stats that I used earlier, this projection that 50% of all US shoppers, period, will have been influenced by online or mobile engagement by 2014. So Barg, can you kind of start off from that point and tell us where exactly is this growth coming from a platform perspective? What are some of the core enabling platforms that are being built out to enable this?
Sure. So as you guys know, the innovator in the space is Apple, and the way they launched iTunes, and even like last week, they launched Mac App Store. So basically, it's like the iTunes, which is on your iPhone, but it's now on your laptop. So you can very easily search for apps and buy apps and install apps with a single click of a button, basically. And they manage your credit card information. So one of the the big trends that's happening is that people are building app stores right into the devices. So you're going to see that even into your TVs, Sony or Samsung TV. There's going to be an app store built in. They're going to have the credit card on file, and they're going to make it easy for you to buy content. A lot of the content that's being purchased at this point is digital content. So it's like movies and music and games and things like that. So in terms of the big platforms, huge adoption of Android last year, and that's going to continue to grow and kind of innovate. So a lot of the other devices are based on Android platforms. So Android, Apple, Windows just launched about a couple of months ago. They're behind the game on the whole app market. So they have some catching up to do. So those are some of the broader trends in the platform space.
So one of the points that you mentioned, this whole notion of digital downloads, the growth is already there. Everything else is kind of catching up. So one big question that's out there is how are the payment options, right, within these apps or within mobile presence services really growing to support non-digital hard goods purchases, right? So Sarah, do you want to talk about kind of what you guys are seeing on that front?
Certainly. We're seeing a shift this year towards the use of NFC, which is near-field communications, whereby you're able to use an NFC-enabled device, i.e. your mobile phone, and tap that phone against an NFC tag at an offline merchant in order to complete the sale. So Google are currently experimenting with this technology in Portland, Oregon. PayPal have slated to launch a similar service towards the second half of this year. And over on the carrier side, we've seen the launch of ISIS, which is a consortium formed of AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, working alongside Discover and Barclays Bank to come up with carrier billing-enabled NFC technology, and expecting more news to come on that later this year as the year unfolds.
So this whole thing with ISIS, is this just another consortium that ultimately is not going to really add anything tangible to the market, or are we actually going to get some services that would be that backbone e-commerce platform?
I think we're at the very embryonic stages of that conversation, and obviously with such huge companies involved, I wouldn't expect anything dynamic to happen too quickly. That being said, the infrastructure and the technology is certainly there, and I think we'll start to see the beginnings of that this year. I mean, obviously, there's a long way to go before NFC chips are in enough devices to offer wide-scale penetration of this technology, but it's certainly something to watch.
And what about Apple? I mean, obviously, they pioneered this whole notion of in-app purchase, the 30% commission, everything else. What exactly, where do they stand at this point in terms of really extending that model to support everything else?
Certainly. I mean, the new Apple devices are going to have the NFC technology built in, so they're on the cusp of this as well. And
Right.
in tandem with AT&T being their partner, and now Verizon with the launch of today of the iPhone on Verizon, I would imagine that we might see some kind of partnership, perhaps between ISIS and Apple. Remains to be seen.
So I think the larger question that all of this kind of begs is, end state in 4 or 5 years. Where are we going to be in terms of payment platforms? Is there going to be a few large players, independent players, PayPal possibly being one? Is this going to be pretty much dominated by carrier-based billing, where essentially the carriers are going to become, for lack of a better term, credit card companies, because all your purchases are essentially going through them? Or will Apple, again, rule the market?
Well, I mean, the stage is set for certainly a showdown there, and it'll be interesting to see where the competition meets partnerships in terms of folks like Apple on the operating side, teaming up with the carriers. More interestingly, I think the opportunity really is at the consumer end, and for the consumer to be able to leave the house without a wallet ultimately is what we're going to see. And we're going to see, the mobile device being the replacement of the old school traditional wallet, and even Sprint recently have announced an initiative, even though they were left out of the ISIS consortium. They've announced the launch of what they call the Sprint wallet this year, whereby one will be able to store various types of payment information, be it credit card information, be it PayPal credentials, into the Sprint device, and again, use that at the point of sale.
Yeah, Barg, I know app developers for a long time chafed at the notion of not really having many payment options that were completely in-app other than Apple. So it was either you pay the 30% or you settle for a less than optimal app experience. So based on recent announcements by PayPal, how is that changing? Do you see PayPal as being a long-term option for an app developer?
Yeah, so what we did is initially we used the in-app purchases to upsell services, subscriptions like downloading magazines and things like that. More recently, we've been using payment gateways, actually like PayPal. PayPal at the end of the month is supposed to launch guest checkout, so you can actually use your credit card, so you don't have to have a PayPal account. So we're seeing that as being a cross-platform vendor integration. And then for like a lot of our bigger merchants, we interface with their web accounts directly. So they have credit card gateways that we interact with. And for those kind of options, they have the best, they give up least amount of money to the carriers or OEMs because they're doing direct billing.
Yeah, so I know Adam's dying to jump into this conversation. So from an affiliate marketer's perspective, right, knowing that one of the pain points is essentially that if you can't track the transaction from your perspective, it didn't happen. You don't care. So how are these platforms, I mean, what do you need from these platforms in order to actually be able to drive volume from an affiliate on the affiliate side?
It's not that the transactions don't happen. I mean, the transactions are happening. We're just not getting compensated for them. That's been the big issue in offline in general. I mean, the affiliates for years have been clamoring and telling merchants to pull the phone numbers off your websites because we're driving traffic there. Somebody calls and we don't get credit for it, and we're not going to spend our money driving PPC traffic to your site in our budgets so that they can call in and you're pushing your phone number and they call in. Now with Ring Revenue's launching of the pay-per-call network and their technology allows some companies that are adopting it to actually swap in a unique phone number into those pages, we can now get credit for those calls, and now the conversation changes. Is get our phone number on your page, integrate it so that we are able to compensate more of those transactions. So I think as mobile continues to grow, and I think we all agree that it's going to, the performance marketing channel, which has always been innovative and been able to find creative ways to drive traffic and volume to merchants, will only get involved with it and not fight against it when the ability to track and monetize those payments those actions are available. And I think that the mobile platform, if done correctly, I think there's an opportunity to bridge some of the offline transactions that are happening and then be able to monetize those. We, as affiliate marketers, we hear the statistic all the time that for every $1 spent online, there's $6 spent offline. and we cringe because we know we're only getting compensated for a very small sliver of some of those transactions. And for us, it forces us to work with merchants that aren't really doing a whole lot of offline transactions because that doesn't make sense for us. We would end up losing money working with ones where they do. So I think there's a lot of opportunities once the platforms get more mature and the performance marketing networks are able to come up with ways to track those actions and transactions.
So if the gaps are purely transitional and it's just a matter of evolution or maturity, right, why aren't we getting there faster? In other words, you would think that it's in everyone's best interest, definitely all the constituents here, right, to drive more transactional volume through these. So why isn't PayPal or Amazon or Apple or anyone else essentially making it easier to support that tracking of purchases so that affiliates, performance marketers get their piece?
Well, performance marketing in a lot of those companies' minds is a very small niche field. So we don't garner a lot of their attention. They're more concerned about how do we get the merchants to be able to take the transactions. They're not really, they have to solve that first. It would be nice if when they're solving that, they also think about how do we track things so that we can compensate third parties, but I think that has always been an afterthought.
It's been an afterthought, right. So again, getting back to the maturity angle, there are probably spots or areas outside of the US where this is more evolved in certain in certain aspects. So Pinky, given that you've got a background in kind of global e-commerce here, are there certain models that we can look to in other parts of the world as kind of a logical end state for where we potentially could end up?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, again, we take sort of a global view in developing a lot of the services, the mobile services that we provide. And I would say that one of the biggest issues is a lot of, at least businesses or end users out there may be thinking about mobile, or they're thinking about mobile payments, but they really may not need it, or they may not be ready for it. And the reasons why is because the systems are fragmented and regionalized around the world. So what may work in one part of the world may not work in another. In the EU, for instance, you would have regulatory issues where your servers are located, where the payment is passing through, where your site's located, all these sorts of things. And it also depends also on the nature of the internet access. In many parts of the world now, in fact, in majority, in the very near future, the first internet experience that consumers will have will be through a mobile device. And it will be their only experience through a mobile device. And they may not have credit cards and be able to set up a PayPal account. For example, in Kenya, using SMS to top up your accounts and switch, that has essentially become a currency to move money around in small amounts. And so in different parts of the world, I think you'll see different types of evolution. In China, which is a big market, but actually they're just sort of getting into 3G there. So they're still trying to figure out payments as well there. And again, a lot of consumers in China don't have credit cards. But back in the United States, and again, we get a lot of customers asking, I shouldn't say a lot of customers, but people are asking about this. And I think one of the challenges is that only about 70% of all small businesses actually have websites, and very few of them have commerce. And I think even a smaller portion of them, at least in the near future, will have any kind of mobile commerce capability until some of these issues are worked out. And some of that relates to web-based apps versus native apps.
Right, which I know is another topic
sort of thing, which is a whole other topic.
Right, right. So in essence, what you're saying is we're kind of left to forge our own way. There isn't an ideal model that can be transplanted for where we could potentially end up.
I don't see one right now on the horizon. I mean, I think there'll be a lot of different types of payment systems out there, again, like near-field communications, token. Again, it's sort of what you were talking about, sort of the offline experience to the online experience. Whether a consumer is going to actually buy something on a mobile device, or a really high barrier is the fact that you still need to go usually to a desktop site to set up whatever payment it is, and that's a really high barrier.
So just with a show of hands, how many of you think it's likely that we'll end up with some sort of a carrier-based billing, ultimately being kind of the predominant billing platform for these products? Anyone? Anyone?
I don't know if it'll be predominant, but I think we'll definitely see that.
Okay.
It really depends on how they structure the fees, both to the consumer and the merchant, I think.
Have you seen your carrier bill?
That's a good point. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Right. It's do you want to get the do you want your carrier bill to essentially look like your credit card bill, which is where you could end up.
It's sticker shock. That's an issue, I think, is
Right.
you're already getting a potentially high bill, and then all of a sudden, wow, you're just reminded of all the things you just bought. Can be an issue.
Right. So Adam made a reference to some of the new capabilities, location-based services and so forth, kind of providing new opportunities, for affiliates to really rethink the model and possibly be commissioned different ways. Ring revenue being a great example. So before we go back to that, Sarah, can you kind of kick off from a location-based service perspective? You guys are doing some, I think, really innovative work in terms of using it both on the targeting side,
Sure.
As well as on actually enabling the transaction fulfillment as well. So can you kind of talk
Absolutely.
to that?
Yeah, a couple of recent examples of brands that we've worked with. We're currently working with Halls, and we're using what we call geofencing technology. And geofencing enables you to essentially establish a radius around a certain location. So Halls are using this technology, combining location of pharmacies alongside the flu index to serve up Halls ads in the vicinity of pharmacies where the flu index is currently very high. So that's one example of how location can be combined with another parameter. Another example could be, I know we're expecting a snowstorm to come through the East Coast later today, which could indeed impede my travel plans. And potentially what could happen, maybe a Las Vegas hotelier could take advantage of knowing that this storm is impending and create a geofence around the area of impacted air travelers and potentially offer accommodation-based offers as another example. Additionally, beyond that, we're also seeing some exciting forays into the click-to-call area, whereby we're currently running a campaign with Office Depot, whereby instead of the mobile ad banner going to a mobile landing page, that mobile ad banner click launches a call, and the call is an opt-in for SMS offers from Office Depot. So this ultimately means that the consumer doesn't have to enter any information. They're not entering their email address. They're not entering their location. We're deriving the location through our technology, and we're combining that with the opt-in from the click to call to then pass back to Office Depot an SMS opt-in list of consumers and merchants that want to receive offers from them. So those are just some of the exciting things that we're seeing on the technology front from a targeting standpoint in mobile advertising.
Yeah. So what does all of this mean for marketers? The targeting piece, that what Sarah just talked about, does that actually translate to something real that can actually be leveraged by performance marketers to better target their ads? That's one part of the question. The other part is, right now, the model that seems to be being followed on mobile mirrors what's done on online in terms of what we consider an action and what's commissioned and so forth. Is there an opportunity, given the nature of mobile engagement, to really think about different actions that are now commissionable? Again, going back to the ring revenue example.
Yeah, well, I think there are a couple things there. Number one, the platform that Sarah's talking about is very intriguing to be able to take location-based information, the ability to drive calls and target people in certain situations, in a situation where we have a bunch of merchants where we're able to get compensated on driving those calls. Right. That's a good combination, and certainly something worth testing. I think affiliate marketers are very good at once they're compensated for something, looking for different ways of testing those out. And I think a platform like that is something we would definitely look at. I think we've seen in our industry, a lot of it started with online transactions, and it started with Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you were buying something online, you got a commission for it. We've seen the market transition to companies as well that are now offering lead-based forms. So it's okay, a lead is of value to us. This company may not be doing online transactions, but they know a lead is worth X, and they're compensating for those leads. So in a mobile world, what is an actionable process for a merchant? Is it a check-in at their place? Is it someone actually physically walking through their door? If we're able to come up with systems that compensate for those things, then affiliate marketers will start driving those and doing promotions around getting people to take those kind of actions. So I think there's some exciting opportunities with the location-based information and some of the social media type things that people are doing with the mobile devices that companies are already promoting and are finding value in having things tweeted, having things retweeted, having people check in. the Facebook Places concept where there are coupons. If you show up at the location with 2 other people, then you're all eligible for an offer. When you combine that and you provide the ability to track that and compensate for it, then the market explodes.
Right. So in theory, that sounds great, but it also sounds like there's a little bit of a catch-22 here, right? In that you need a certain amount of critical mass and volume to actually attract the affiliates to do some of these things. Right? On the other hand, you need the affiliates there driving volume to actually improve the capabilities as well. Right? So how is it likely that you kind of get over that hump?
Well, I think it's a little bit different. I think you have merchants who are already seeing value in these types of actions based on the behaviors that they're doing from a marketing perspective. As merchants exhaust their ability to get those actions on their own, then they'll take the step of how do we compensate other people to help us drive those transactions. At that point, it's a question of, are the networks ready to be able to track those kind of transactions and compensate for them? That's where things are currently falling down, and where opportunities exist for entrepreneurs like Bring Revenue to come in and say, hey, here's a platform that allows you to get paid to pay your partners on calls. And they've done a great job at integrating with the networks and into their platforms, and all the networks have quickly adopted that, and now it's more to the merchants to get it up and running. So I do think there are a lot of opportunities as the merchants identify value in these mobile actions to then take that to the next level.
So you see this as being innovation that's driven from the merchant side, right? In other words, they're driving based on their needs where this needs to go.
Well, yeah, I think the merchants have marketing budgets, and a lot of that drives, what are we willing to pay for? But there's also, it is a catch-22 because it's not only what are we willing to pay for, but what can be tracked that we can, so that we can pay for it, because the merchants aren't innovating the ability to track those things and compensate for them. We haven't seen a lot of that. I think it does take a company with an understanding of the platforms that currently exist and figuring out a way to bridge that gap for both the merchants and the networks to be able to offer that to performance marketing companies.
But and this is a question to all of you, don't you fundamentally believe that the merchants are still struggling with trying to understand how all of this fits together? Essentially, they're looking for someone to point the way for a model that works. So if we're looking to the merchants to drive a lot of this innovation, is that the
they're not going to drive the innovation. They're going to drive they want customers and they want sales. And if somebody visiting their store, they know the value of that based on other people coming to the store and what the average purchase is. So it's all coming back to what is the value of these individual actions that are trackable. And that turns into real value and dollars for the merchants. And at the end of the day, we're all concerned about profits and revenue generation. And that's where the lead precedes the sale. And we've come up with ways to do that online and do a lot of lead-based compensation models. The question is, can we derive mobile-based compensation models, and what is a mobile lead? And I think that's where things are really going to be interesting to watch as they unfold.
Do you guys have any examples of larger retailers or smaller merchants, for that matter, that are on the leading edge of essentially looking at rewarding or incentivizing these actions like check-ins and so forth? Anyone?
I do know, as far as mobile is concerned, in some of the products that we offer, such as device detection, and this is becoming extremely important to online retailers. I won't speak for Target, but Target is one of our customers, and it's very important that you, for analytical purposes, just know who is coming to your site and from what type of mobile devices. What is the profile of the type of person that might have that particular mobile device? What are the capabilities of it? Someone who has an iPhone versus someone who has a plain vanilla phone with a plain vanilla browser on it might be looking for different types of services and products to buy. So from that standpoint, it's very important to know that. And I would agree. I mean, tracking is extremely important. If someone's going to call you, that's important to know. If you're offering a coupon, do you know where that coupon came from? Did it come from this particular ad campaign, or did it come from this particular user using these particular devices?
Right. So actually, staying with you for a second, Pinky, and Barg also. So one of the other, I guess, religious battles, if you can call it that, that's going on is this whole notion of, what is the right experience? Is it a mobile app as a marketing channel, or is it a mobile web experience? And we're seeing a lot of evolution really on both fronts in parallel, right? And different retailers are taking different approaches. Some are taking both, hedging their bets. So where does this all go? I mean, what is the right form? Which of these two forms is the right way for a consumer to find a merchant, A, and B, actually engage and transact with that merchant, which may not be the same mechanism. Barg, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, kind of apps are ruling the world this day, but I think from apps are more like the show horse, and the mobile web is like the workhorse. Because, for example, if you're taking Southwest flight, you're more likely to go to browser and type in Southwest, 1391 or something like that, and immediately what you see is you want to see a mobile web page with, the flight is not canceled and the gate number is B7, so on. So a lot of the work is going to be done by the mobile web, but at the same time, the mobile web page starts advertising the app that you can download, Southwest app, for example. And the idea behind the app is that, one, it could work offline in a limited fashion. Two, that it's a lot more responsive. And three, really, maybe you can have a more deeper engagement with your customer. So you already have their Southwest Rapid Rewards number inside. You can also give them promotions and things like get a free drink or something like that because of the weather. So I think you're going to have a combination of apps as well as the mobile web, and they have to work together in tandem.
Yeah. So as a marketing channel, again, focusing on the performance marketing constituency. So are you viewing apps as basically being a potential mechanism, kind of using an online analogy, Adam, to basically create the app equivalent of link farms or whatever to drive affiliate marketing? Is that even a possibility? Are there affiliates doing this?
I think there are a lot of affiliates who are dabbling in the app space and looking to create apps that drive commissionable transactions. I think the concern is, as our partners start creating their own apps, there aren't really a lot of hooks into their apps where an affiliate online or via PPC can drive a transaction to that app to make the purchase. Like, I can't go in and create a link to a mobile link to a product on Amazon that launches the Amazon app and passes my affiliate ID into that, so that when they make that transaction in the app, that I get compensated for it. Will that evolve? I think it's tough because it's not only the app, but it's the integration into the phone to communicate with apps, which doesn't exist for the iPhones right now either. I don't know if it is on Android. I mean, that's a question for Barg. But I think the opportunities are there for innovative affiliates to come up with interesting apps that make the purchase process easier, makes finding deals and coupons. A lot of us do deals and coupon stuff, so providing those kind of services into the apps are important. The breakdown occurs where I start the process in the mobile device, and then I complete the purchase on my computer, and that computer has never been cookied. So, there's too many points right now where the breakdown in actually being compensated as an affiliate can happen, and that's where it pulls away from affiliates wanting to put a lot of energies into it, because you can create a great app that everyone loves and uses, but if you can't cookie and get that link into the process, then it's a non-commissionable activity. And great, the merchants are making money, but you've created this great app, and 99 cents selling that app isn't what drives the kind of volume that we're looking for. So what we want to be able to do is give away a free app that the whole world adopts, and we get a piece of all the transactions. That's the model that's going to win, and that's where we need to figure out the tracking.
Right. So I've listened to Adam complain now for 8 straight years about lack of attribution and trackability and all of that, and I'm sure this controversy will continue into the online space as well. But what exactly is happening then on the mobile app development or mobile web development front to actually make this a little bit easier than it's been in the online, in the desktop online space. That is the trackability of sale. Barg, you want to?
I mean, you could. So it's in early stages. A lot of developers are not using it, but you could launch other apps, from one app to the other app. You could pass in like little information, but it's really. It's not that easy. I mean, a lot of people need to know, the developers basically need to know, they need to find tricks in passing the affiliate ID across apps and stuff. But I do expect that's going to change, over time, basically.
And what about on the network side? How are you guys dealing with it, Sarah?
Well, I mean, the interesting distinction for us is that it doesn't really matter whether it's an app or mobile web. Our ad network spans across both. So if you're advertising through Where ads, your ad could be served up on an app or within a mobile website, dependent on the publisher and what inventory they're making available to us. With respect to the actual tracking piece, in addition to the click-to-call functionality, which I mentioned, which is obviously trackable, we also track other indices, such as clicking for directions as an indicator of intent to purchase for an offline transaction. And we're seeing about 11% what we call secondary engagement. So that's from the click from the initial banner through to the landing page, and then 11% taking action on that landing page that is indicative of some kind of intent to purchase.
So this whole notion of intent seems to kind of transcend a lot of the stuff that we talked about, right? So how are you guys, with the analytics and everything else that you guys have, and understanding that from an affiliate marketer's perspective, it's all around intent, right? It's intent and proving intent through trackability. What are you guys doing, and what are you seeing in terms of new ways of being able to gauge intent by triangulating, location, other actions that are being performed on mobile? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Certainly. I mean, in addition to click to call and click for directions, which are the two obvious ones, checking in, you mentioned earlier, being another one that we measure, and we've actually done some interesting work around that with McDonald's recently, whereby if a consumer checks into a Burger King or a Dunkin' Donuts, we then push them a coupon for a McDonald's beverage, and it depends on the time of day as to what kind of beverage they're pushed an ad for. So in the morning it could be a cup of coffee, in the afternoon it might be a smoothie. We're also able to weave in the weather and the temperature to really target those offers. And that is all intensely trackable through the actual coupon method at the point of sale through McDonald's. So there are ways ultimately to kind of track this back. You just have to kind of think out of the box a little bit and use the technology that's available.
Yeah, and in the same context, QR codes, right, for a while now have kind of been hyped as the ultimate way to bridge online and offline. But it still seems that one factor being, lack of standards, that it's still kind of just not quite getting enough traction yet. So where is that going? Adam, you want to start again from a marketing perspective? Is that something that you can actually leverage now, or are you waiting for further evolution for the maturity?
I don't think the average consumer knows what a QR code is. They see these little things everywhere, and they have no idea what they need to point at them to get them to do anything. I mean, I scanned the QR code of one of the network solutions T-shirts the other night, and it just pulled up their website. It was, wow.
You were using the wrong reader, which again highlights the problem with standards, right?
And so I think that there's some opportunities there if the technology gets adopted mainstream to integrate an offer and a call in an offline scenario to create an online trackable. Online is in either a call or a web type, affiliate coded link to something to make something happen. I think it's interesting. It's something to watch, but it's not something to invest in yet.
Interesting. Is there anyone making any investments or doing any innovation in that space right now, in kind of in a large, meaningful scale, either in the U.S. or Pinky in Europe?
Again, I think it is as fragmented as you were saying, and I think everyone seems to agree. I think the issue is again, the average person on the street doesn't know what it is. I think a lot of people still don't even know what barcodes are, and the other thing is your business. I think the way we're looking at it, from a little bit different perception, for the mobile web to grow, it's going to take more than just big businesses getting into it, because surprisingly, very few of them still actually understand how it works. A lot of the innovation, I think, is going to come from the smaller businesses, and you still have to be found. You can't be found on an app store necessarily, and you have to share revenue in an app store, and you have to have forward compatibility with all these various different apps, but including things like QR codes. You still have to direct to a URL. That needs to be found again on hopefully on Google or Yahoo and that sort of thing.
So actually, that's a good segue, because this notion of being able to find a merchant. In essence, we've gone from having a search model on mobile to having an alternative model, which is searching within the App Store to find potentially what the points of engagement are with the merchant. So do you contend that ultimately people will still find, or consumers will still find merchants primarily through a traditional search model as opposed to looking for apps within the App Store?
Yeah, it's kind of a religious thing for me. I have pretty strong opinions on.
Question,
yeah, I know, for web-based mobile apps versus the apps in the App Store and all that. And again, I think it's the App Store model is great, I think, for certain types of businesses and certain types of situations. But for the average small business out there, Joe's, fish and chips shack or whatever, he just wants to be found, he wants to be called, he wants to have coupons, he wants to see those customers come into his store or call him up for orders and that sort of thing. And how can he track that against what he's paying for? Joe's Fish Shack is not going to be able to afford to develop for the App Store, for the Android store, for the Palm store, for this store, and have the forward compatibility for all that. Which is why I think, again, I don't think consumers are going to change their behavior necessarily. I think that's why mobile search is so important. People still search for businesses the old-fashioned, I shouldn't say the old-fashioned way, but I think they're going to continue to search the way they have searched for it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the App Store, but the App Store isn't everything, especially in a global sense of the word. The iPhone certainly is not in a global sense. It still has a tiny fraction of the entire handset market.
Right. And networks and platforms like Sarah's don't care. They're agnostic. Wherever you find it, we'll market through it.
Exactly. That's important.
But at the same time, though, I mean, just coming out of CES last week, there's definitely the notion of the App Store has definitely struck a chord, resonated well beyond just the mobile space, right? So what are you expecting next, Barg, from Apple or from anyone else? Sony, Samsung, a whole bunch of them rolled out app stores, right? How is this really going to change the notion of conducting transactions, not necessarily on mobile, thinking beyond mobile, but in that app context?
Yeah, I mean, I think so people are going to have their mobile phone. There's going to be an app store on there. They might have some sort of tablet device like iPad or Samsung device. So there's going to be an app store built in. You're going to go watch TV, and there's going to be an app store there to download movies or whatever. And then all of these things could naturally, you can go from one to the other transparently. The classic example is we bought a Sony a Blu-ray player. And so we actually can control using an iPhone, you can control the Sony Blu-ray. And then also Sony has an account. We created an account, right? So they have our credit card number and things like that. So I do see, beyond mobile, that all these devices will be integrated, that you're going to be able to start your movie on iPhone and then move to your TV and then back to your iPad. And this is just going to happen naturally. And companies like Netflix and those guys are going to, sort of kind of pave the way for that. And you can see that same kind of experience for Amazon too. So regardless of what device you're going to be on, you're going to be able to go easily from one to the other and complete a transaction.
Right. So now we're definitely going beyond mobile, right? But again, if platforms like Sarah's can essentially direct ads regardless of what the platform is, from a marketer's perspective, is this on your radar that is thinking beyond mobile, what the different monetization opportunities exist within the Samsung App Store or Panasonic's Vera Connect or whatever it is they call their app store?
Well, I think it's all interesting. As those app stores create affiliate models where they're willing to compensate for the transactions, it becomes more interesting and makes room for innovation. I mean, iTunes has had an affiliate program for a long time, and they've done some innovative things where you can, from a web click on a web page, I can market an app, and when you click on that app, it actually launches your your iTunes on your computer, and when you make that purchase, they share a portion of that transaction. So, I mean, the technology is there for some of those things, and I think as these app stores look for ways to grow and build volume, I think that they'll start looking for revenue sharing models. The performance marketing channel is a very strong fit because they only pay for performance, and that's very powerful. So I think there'll be some opportunities.
I'll come back to the same question I asked earlier, ask the same question in a slightly different way, which is, but who's going to be driving this, right? Are the app stores essentially going out and looking for kind of new affiliate models that they can drive? Is it going to be driven on the advertiser, on the merchant front to say, hey, this is another great channel. I need to figure out how to commission the affiliates and then drive the innovation within the app store itself? Who do you see really being the constituent that kind of drives this?
Honestly, I think it's open right now for someone to come in and innovate something that's going to make it easy for everyone to adopt. The problem right now is it's difficult. It's not easy, and it's not currently very trackable. I'm not sure who's going to step up to be the innovator there. It could come from someone in this room. It could come from one of the networks. I doubt that it's going to come from AT&T, Verizon, or any of these other companies. Yeah. We just haven't seen that. But I would keep a close eye on Apple. I would keep a close eye on Google. And I would keep a close eye on Facebook. Some of the things that they're doing with the places and checking in and coupons and enabling these local coupons are very interesting. So I would keep an eye on all those companies.
Great. So that's a good way to summarize everything we talked about. We have about 15 minutes, I think. Yeah, we have about 15 minutes. So can we spend about 10 minutes? If there are any questions, we'll just do a Q&A. Again, completely casual. Anything is up for discussion. Any questions? Yeah.
Free apps, like if you have a blog, the benefit of getting visitors to your website.
Oh, it's good. Great question. So using free apps as a way to essentially drive traffic to your, right. Barg, you want to answer that? Do you see a lot of that going on?
So yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, there is an app store graveyard in some sense, so it's easy to get lost in there, and it's like endless shelf, right? So Apple is very careful at promoting certain apps that are really successful, and we call it reaching the orbit, which is that you get several thousand downloads a day or something like that. So it's really hard for people to find these free apps. You have to promote it yourself and things. So that's the problem with that. And also free apps are also are easy target for bad reviews. And so bad reviews means like people aren't going to download them and delete them.
A lot of them do it just to get their brand out there.
Yeah.
And then they develop better apps.
Right.
You see that a lot here.
There's a microphone in the middle. I don't think people can hear in the back, and I'm not sure any of us could repeat.
I'm sorry, I can repeat the question.
You're asking, so it's very difficult.
Right. So the question was basically using these free apps for brand promotion, right? Right, and then to make a pay. So I think you got the question, but I would kind of break that down into how a small merchant would approach it versus, obviously larger brands who've been doing this for a while.
So I mean, I think using a platform like dotMobi is a good way, but that's all on the mobile website. There are other platforms that allow you to take that and turn it into an app. So it's possible you can build it, but it's just it's discovery of the app. How are you going to promote that app? That's the key. And then also when people download an app, they have a higher expectation. They want it to be a lot more responsive. They want it to work when the network isn't so great. For example, I downloaded the Win app, and it's pretty lousy user experience because just 3G is pretty lousy here. So.
Right. And just one thing, you guys may be able to elaborate on this, but I know there are a bunch of services out there that let you spin out free apps, or rather apps, very cheaply for a few $100s. But one of the issues that I think they've been consistently running into is this notion of Apple taking having a strong voice and saying, if your app is very limited in scope, that is, it targets very small segment, then even if you pay, we're not going to promote it. We're not going to put it in the App Store. So I think that's another part of the challenge for the smaller guys. That is limited reach. Apple's just not interested, even if you pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a great example is one of our friends built a Black Friday app. Apple rejected it, so they never got into the market. Whereas in Android, there's less controls, so you could actually publish that. But then you still have to tweet about it and get people to know that there's a free app that they could download, and then you can start pointing them to the deals. So
is it safe to say that it doesn't shortcut the marketing or promotion process?
Exactly.
It just introduces other elements into it, right?
Right.
Right.
Well, and you also have to come at it from the perspective of, you're not creating an app to drive traffic to your website. You're creating an app to create a better user experience for what that consumer is going to be doing on their mobile device. And that might also drive traffic to portions of your website in that process. But what are you doing to enhance the user experience for what that consumer is going to be doing? I think that's the approach you need to take if you're going to be successful. And you can do, I think, being free and looking at in-app purchases and other ways to monetize through some of the advertising networks like Where and things like that. I think there's opportunities, but you have to build something that people want to use. Otherwise, you won't be in the App Store, you'll be in the crap store.
right.
Quite a few sound bites here. Any other questions? Yes, back there. Sure, I'll expect an affiliate commission, but one is App Maker. I believe the company it's called Pointabout, or maybe they renamed themselves to App Maker, but they were actually exhibiting at CES, so they're actually pretty well known. And so again, I think they've found quite a bit of traction, but dealing with some of the Apple challenges, I don't think that they've been able to get past that necessarily.
Yeah, and a couple of other options are there's also PhoneGap. There's also another company called Mobile. Okay, so there's Mobile is one other option, and also PhoneGap.
One thing you might look at as well is go to a site like Odesk and define what it is you want to be created, and let the world bid on doing it at the cheapest price. You'd be amazed at how cheap people are willing to build things for you for little to nothing through Odesk and Elance and those type of sites. As long as you're willing to take the role of, you need to clearly define what it is you want. But there are some really good developers out there that are sitting in far off corners of the world willing to work for peanuts.
Any other questions? Yes.
You talked in the beginning about the PayPal solution they're developing. Could you describe it more from the point of view of the consumer? How do you experience the...
Sure. Yeah. You were talking. I think you're referring to Ring Revenue. That name was dropped a few times, right?
I think you said PayPal.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Never mind. Okay. So I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question again? So
how would a user experience the PayPal payment solution if you go to your app and you want to buy something?
Great. Right. Barg, can you take that? Both, I guess, taking into account the recent improvements that they made as well.
Sure. So on the web, the way it works is, so if you're selling shoes, right? So you have your site that shows the shoe, but when he says checkout, it takes you to the PayPal site. You either log in and you put the credit card information, and then complete the transaction, and then it brings you back to your shoe site. So that's how it happens on the web, right? Same thing with mobile web and mobile apps, which is that the developer, like myself, would get an API to their service. So I would have a Zappos app or shoe app, basically, right? And so when they hit the checkout, you'll see the familiar PayPal logo. Either you can just log in with your PayPal account, or at the end of the month, you'll be able to actually just, as a guest, without having to create a PayPal account, you would put in your credit card number, complete the transaction, and the control goes back to your store, basically. So it would work the same way as the web.
But that's very cumbersome for consumers doing this mobile now, so that's why the in-app solutions are more likely to get very popular.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem is, like, if you're selling shoes and your margins are 6 to 10% or something, you can't afford to give 30% to Apple. So that's that's one of the issues. Some of the other technologies that are coming out is called a Square Up, which is like a little square device that you can connect to your microphone port on any of the phones, and you can slide the card through. So that's one easy way to enter credit card information into your phone. So there are some innovative solutions that are coming out that makes that whole checkout process simpler.
But with the recent enhancements to PayPal, is it possible to have a mobile app experience from a developer's perspective, right? That lets you conduct the transaction on the back end without affecting the experience for the user on the front end. So you still collect all the same information. You collect the credit card information. PayPal does the transaction, but you're at no point leaving your app.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all within the app, the whole experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? We probably have time for one more. Okay, last call. Nope. Okay. So we have a couple minutes left. I thought it would be useful to just to go through the panel and get your thoughts on where we think we're going to go in 2011, either predictions or major trends that you're already observing. The things we've talked about covered a pretty wide spectrum. So Pinky, you want to start? I mean, what do you think is going to be a major trend that we'll have to keep our eyes on from a mobile payment perspective?
Well, I think you're going to see a lot more small businesses engaged with the mobile web over the next year. They're going to see an explosion of mobile web applications as opposed to just apps. I think you'll see millions more out there. I don't necessarily see them this year engaging in commerce other than perhaps using ad platforms that work across multiple platforms and that sort of thing. But that's where I see it going. I just see quite an explosion globally of just content, mobile content that can be actually found from a device. And that has important implications for performance marketers who want to be able to reach that traffic.
But you're saying not just from the device, but from the device in a mobile web context.
In a mobile web context, yeah,
So, okay.
exactly. Yeah, I think the mobile the amount of devices, phones are just they say the smartphones versus non-smartphones. I think all phones are just getting smarter, and then the question is how performance marketers can take advantage of the capabilities of these various devices and the publishers as well, and advertisers.
Great, thank you. Sarah?
Sure, I'm sure we're going to see a raft of innovations this year in the mobile space, but two specific ones I'd like to focus on. Firstly, on the consumer side, I think we're going to see a shift away from local search and a shift towards what I'm calling local discovery. And by that, I mean a much more personalized experience on the mobile device. And I would give the example of, let's say, Pinky and I both ran a search for pizza. Maybe we'd get different results predicated on our history and predicated on other behavioral information that was captured within the mobile device. So I think you'll see that shift on the consumer side. And then perhaps relevant to this audience, on the advertiser side, I think you're going to see an opening up of mobile advertising and some of the exciting technologies that I've talked about to a much wider audience via a plethora of self-service platforms. And we're actually developing one currently whereby people can go in and, very much like Google PPC, can purchase and target mobile advertising.
So I'm sorry, so along those lines, one specific question. So between iAds and Google's AdMob and your own Where ads and everything else, I know this is a self-serving question, but try to be objective here. Where do you think the most growth is going to come from?
I think that the growth is going to come on the local side. I mean, there's some recent stats. Google are stating that 1/3 of search relates to location, and Microsoft is saying on the mobile device, 53% of search is related to something local and location-based. So I think the winners in the game are going to be folks like us that can pair location-aware technology alongside other targeting parameters to create very personalized, relevant campaigns.
Yeah, I think on the practical side, I agree with Pinky that which is, most of the businesses will start having, or at least thinking about having, mobile websites. So I think that's just going to have a huge growth. On the sort of the technology and the innovation side, I think most of the devices will have the app stores. And then so the apps and the mobile sites have to work together to get the job done, basically. So I do see, app stores on your laptops, app stores on your TV, on your PlayStation, all these devices, and making it easier for you to consume content and goods.
Adam, so is this going to be the year that you finally get completely ubiquitous and seamless trackability and attribution across all channels?
No. I think from a performance marketing standpoint, you won't see a whole lot this year. I do think you'll see more merchants going into the pay-per-call stuff and figuring out ways to monetize those transactions. I think you'll see some innovative affiliates playing with some mobile applications. And I think what it's really going to take, and I think we'll start seeing it this year, maybe next year, is innovations on simplifying the checkout process and payment process online. I don't think it's going to be people plugging in credit card swipers and things like that into their phones. I mean, the consumers aren't going to put up with that. So I think it's going to be companies like Apple. I mean, the 30% model that we all talk about is what they've priced digital goods at. I would see Apple looking at enabling in-app purchases for real goods at reasonable rates that allow them to capture portions of the transactions and still facilitate the shipping and stuff. I think there's some hurdles there, but I would look towards companies like that to simplify the checkout process. It just makes sense, and my prediction is that Apple will be the one to do it.
That's a very specific prediction. We'll have to hold you to it. Great. Well, thank you all for your thoughts. Again, I want to thank the panel. We're pretty much out of time at this point. Pinky Brand, Sarah Hodkinson, Barg, Upender, and Adam Viener. And thank you all. And if you have any other questions, just feel free to come up to us after the session's over. Thanks.